So as I say, this is, comes from the Wilson Research Group. It's done by Harry Fuster. His Mentor Graphics is obviously now a part of Siemens. So this is the survey that gets run every year by Wilson Research. It's a big participation, so I think that means that we can trust the stats pretty well. So this is the ASIC sign-off code. He does split into ASIC and he splits into FPGA as well. So these are useful just to see what the rest of the industry is doing and try to align yourself with the rest of the industry. Some of the metrics he collects also shows things moving over the years, and certainly when we first started using OVM and UVM and system Verilog, you could see really the uptake in those languages and methodologies grew rapidly. I think what we can see here is that the sort of sign-off criteria moves a lot less slowly. So this is the last, I guess, 6 years, so 2014 up to 2020, and it's done every 2 years, so we've got 4 data points there. And still the main sign-off criteria of ASIC, that all the tests documented in the verification plan are complete and passing. That hits 40% as the main sign-off criteria. 40% of people use that. Interestingly, people still say when project plan schedule says sign-off, just assuming that the verification is okay. Certainly, I think a lot of people look more towards the market and signing off on time, but as maybe have some minimal priority 1 targets that they use for sign off, and they judge site verification to be okay, and not necessarily they need to hit the other priority targets, and it's very much schedule driven to make sure that they're releasing on time. And emulation or prototype, working in the lab, and so I know a lot of our customers use that as well. Emulation is actually becoming a much more popular technique, and people spend lots of money on that. And but prototyping using FPGAs is a poor person's equivalent, and used quite often as well. But the second highest is code and functional coverage metrics, and I think all 3 of our speakers have mentioned that. They've also mentioned about the verification plan. I mean, when we can no longer think of any more tests to write, that scores lowly, as you'd imagine. So when the rate of bugs found per week drops below a specified goal, I think Anthony definitely talked about that, about looking at bug curves, but I think all 3 of our speakers mentioned about looking at stats, weekly stats, and keeping those stats to make sure that you know, we're heading towards a plateauing of those important statistics. When the project plan says sign off regardless of status, that's quite low. There was a big blip in 2016. I don't know what happened in 2016, but that's low, and other is quite low as well. So if we move to FPGA, then I think what you'll notice jumps out. We've got this in a spreadsheet as well, so I'll show you the spreadsheet before we finish. You can do a comparison. So they're much more FPGA, much more verification plan driven, and they do a lot more emulation or prototype. We should expect really, because you're put into an FPGA, you've effectively got a prototype design already. So and so therefore that's higher. Okay. So what I also wanted to do is just we put this into a spreadsheet, and we'll share the spreadsheet with you afterwards here. So those numbers have been put into a spreadsheet, split between ASIC and FPGA, and then just a very basic graph here. So this is this is for the second criteria, when the project plan schedule says sign off, assuming that the verification is okay. So we do that in ASIC a lot more than we do in FPGA by the lots of things, and it's on the increase in ASIC. And if we want to, we can quickly change the data on this as well. So if you wanted to compare ASIC and FPGA on the first criteria, and then hopefully, oh, there you are, I thought I'd done that. Oh, sorry. Let me, right here. You can see I'm doing this on the fly. I thought that was going to work. It appears not to have worked. It worked in practice. Okay, well, it did work in practice, but I'll go back. It does. I'll go back to the first one, and you can compare. You can compare these. So ASIC and FPGA. We've released the slides as well as the spreadsheet, so you can make some comparisons, hopefully more successfully than I just did. Okay, so without further ado, I think we're finished there. I don't think there's any questions. I'm looking to Sarah. Sarah's not posted any questions for me.
No questions, Mike.